Welcome, friends and foes, survivors and killers. Let's sit around the campfire together and talk about Dead by Daylight, specifically the Skull Merchant. The killer everyone loves to hate, and what I would do if I was given the power to rework her power from the ground up. Okay, sorry, just a little bit of housekeeping before we get going. First of all, I'm proud to say I did the narration for Varianthinks' recent chapter spotlight video on Amnesia. Real honour to work with these people, and it was just a fantastic time, so do go watch that video. It is amazingly high production value, and just, you need to see it, so links in the description. Second thing, Collision Problems Megan has actually been copyright striked. It's been blocked around the world for copyrighted content, which is kinda shit, and really just an abuse of the system. Nevertheless, I'm going to make heavy edits to it, try and get it re-uploaded, probably next week. Might be around the time the Nick Cage video comes out, because obviously he's coming on PTB next week, I need to talk about him. So expect that coming sooner rather than later, a return of Collision Problems Megan, because that video has disappeared, and I need to get it back up, because, well, I'm really proud of it. Well, anyway, hope you enjoyed this one, and back to the video. Okay, so it's no real secret, people do not like the Skull Merchant at all. In terms of her power, she's almost certainly Dead by Daylight's most disliked killer, and the only reason she might not be is because she's played infrequently enough that she doesn't appear in many matches to begin with. That isn't a great sign when a killer's biggest saving grace is that they're unpopular enough that not many games get ruined by them. Her reputation was so bad that Tools of Torment chapter got review bombed on Steam, and you pretty much can't say the killer's name without hearing the roar of 1,000 angry gamers like you've just said some sort of slur. Wait, never mind, this is the DBD community we're talking about. We have a long and loving history of saying all the slurs we like. Her lore was lambasted, her character design was picked apart, and her gameplay was and remains incredibly unpopular for combining two general play patterns that players find insufferable. Hold W zoning, where a survivor is forced to leave a tile with a drone or just get exposed and die, and selecting a triangle of 3 generators at the start of the game to defend for the duration, and hold survivors in the match pretty much indefinitely until the server's timeout to force them to spend ages trying to break it. These two play patterns have become synonymous with the Skull Merchant, and it's the main reason players don't like her. Which brings me to a slightly awkward juncture. As I said in other videos before, I actually quite like the Skull Merchant. Don't get me wrong, I think she's far from perfect, which is why this video exists, but I've always had a more positive relationship with her than most players have. I think her lore has some good points, especially after her tome. I've been a fan of her outlandish and strange design since day one, and while I understand that her ability to create miserable situations is effectively unparalleled, I do have a lot of fun when I play her. This puts me in a pretty unique situation. Skull Merchant is in an unhealthy spot, and she should and will get changes. But I don't want to see her turn into something that she isn't. I rather like this killer, and don't believe that she deserves to get Freddied, effectively deleted from the game and replaced with something else entirely. I ask myself, and you, is there a way that Skull Merchant's gameplay identity, power fantasy, and general vibe could be kept intact while changing her gameplay to be meaningfully healthy for both sides? So I set myself a challenge that at first seemed impossible. Devise a rework for the Skull Merchant that addresses these two major issues: Hold W zoning, and 3-gen hostage holding, without just making her a whole new killer or making her dog shit. Because what's the point of making a killer healthier if the end result is so crap that nobody plays her anyway? We've gone over what makes her not appealing, the kind of stuff that should be addressed in a rework, but before I show you my proposed rework, let's talk first about the most important things that a rework should preserve: the character's gameplay identity and power fantasy. To put it broadly, the power fantasy of a character in a game is the idea that that character projects onto the player who's playing them. This is done through a mixture of things like gameplay, visual and sound design and animations, and a power fantasy is the core part of the identity of any playable character, especially in an asymmetrical game like Dead by Daylight, where the choice of killer generally decides how the game is going to go. Michael Myers is a great example of a killer with an ironclad power fantasy. Myers is the Stalker, the Shape Watcher wanting survivors to jump scare them with Tier 3 in a manner reminiscent and highly evocative of his MO in the Halloween movies. Skull Merchant has a distinct power fantasy too. It is the most important thing to preserve in a rework, and no other killer in the game gets to do it quite like she does. Information-based micromanagement through drone usage. The Skull Merchant at her peak is all about area control and information collection, and the drones provide that. But the way they're designed and function right now means the only information they give you consistently is, look, someone's working on a generator in your 3-gen, go get them off it. There is still room to make Skull Merchant the information collection killer without making her the 3-gen killer, and you do that by trading the perfect reliability of the drone's short-range info on generators with a longer range of info collection to expand your reach across the map. Dead by Daylight already has two killers who excel at getting long-range information, Artist and Singularity, and they both work really well. Because their long-range info collection has definite clear periods where it is or is not active, and with that long-range information comes long-range lethality. That means that survivors getting caught out at any range are always in danger of going down. Skull Merchant's drones being retooled into long-range information collection could learn some lessons from these two. There's also her role as a pseudo-stealth killer to consider. Between the undetectable she gets from inside a drone's radius, and the add-ons she has to disorient survivors further using the drones, I think there's potential for a very interesting stealth killer in the elements Skull Merchant leaves us with. The most fun I have with Skull Merchant personally is using these stealth, tracking, disruption elements that already exist in her kit to juggle survivors in various places around the map instead of just playing Gen Police. Slamming on 2 stealth add-ons and Plaything lets you play some really fun matches where you can use the drones not just to protect gens, but also dance around your totems and kind of control the whole map, because you know everything, but the survivors know nothing. To me at least, this is peak Skull Merchant. You're not using the purple add-ons to pseudo-clown people to death by travelling with Bloodlust 100 and just grinding survivors down by moving a lot faster than them, nor are you occupying your favourite generators like the green properties on a Monopoly board. You're micromanaging survivors and their information, and it's the kind of thing Skull Merchant should be about. More eyes in the sky and less eyes on the gen. Claw traps from the radar mechanic are a major part of this, as they punish survivors for excessively fucking with the power, with additional tracking using the radar, which is easily DBD's most unique form of tracking survivors, and is a really cool addition to her kit that the rework should probably preserve. So with these criteria informing my decisions, what have I actually come up with? Well, let's start with the most important thing that I've scrapped. Drones no longer expose survivors. It's at the core of what makes her 3-gen so punishing, because you can't do what you'd normally do against a 3-gen killer. Take a hit, run from the gen, reset and try again. Remove the expose and suddenly that becomes an option. And it also addresses the zoning to some extent by allowing you to stay in a tile with an active drone, although she will have the lethality to replace this, which I'll go into later. Drones have 3 different modes: inactive, scouting and pursuit. Inactive drones can be disabled but scouting and pursuing drones can't. Scouting and pursuing drones can be recalled but inactive ones can't. Before we get into what these modes do, let me just affirm that if I don't talk about something, it's how it works on live. Things like when you get your drones back, the drone's AoE detection size, undetectable when you're under an active drone, even the number of drones. If I haven't talked about it, it's staying the same as it is on live. Inactive drones are similar to current inactive drones. They stay still and do the sweepy thing that they currently do. When an inactive drone picks up a survivor on the sweepy thing, it will start pursuing them in 10 seconds if it isn't disabled in time. When the killer deploys a drone, it spawns it inactive and has no unhackable grace period duration, but can be ordered by the killer to turn it into a scouting drone. Scouting drones are similar to the current active drones. They constantly monitor the whole surrounding area for survivors, but there is one major difference. To turn an inactive drone into a scouting drone, the killer controls it like a pinhead chain and picks a direction for it to go in. It will go in that direction on 50% speed until it reaches an obstacle or another drone's radius, where it will become inactive, stay still, and be unable to be selected for new orders for 12 seconds. Once this period is complete, the killer can issue a new order by picking a new direction and repeat the process. The drones return to the killer once the third order has been fully completed. If a drone picks up a survivor in scouting or inactive mode, it will enter pursuit mode. Spend 15 seconds following them around at a constant distance of 6 meters, highlighting them on the radar and hovering after them like an angry bee. After 3 seconds of pursuit mode, the killer can take control of it as if it was inactive. When the killer is in control, it will continue to follow the survivor automatically at that 6 meter range until the killer activates crash and burn, firing the drone a lot like a pinhead chain, and dealing a health state if they can crash it into the survivor, destroying the drone in the process. This version of the killer still has claw traps, but their function is radically different. Disabling an inactive drone will affect the survivor with a claw trap. It will draw 25 seconds before being able to remove manually using the hacking minigame. These claw traps can be tracked on the radar, but don't provide the automatic pallet break or the haste that they do on live. Instead, when the killer is ordering an inactive drone, they will see the location of all claw trap survivors on Killer Instinct and can order it to go after one of them instead. The drone will then fly over in scouting mode, homing in on their location at 150% speed, initiating a pursuit if they get their full claw trappers removed, and going into inactive mode if it doesn't get there in time. Okay, does this power make sense? Because I'm going to go into some of the rationale for some of my decisions now. First things first, the 3-gen thing. and that's what everyone's worrying about. Drones moving around does make you think that the power will be most useful to patrol a 3-gen, but the inactivity period between giving orders gives survivors enough time to deactivate a drone that's being used to patrol the gen. Remember, if it's staying still, it's forced out of scouting mode and probably can't see you. Between that and the lack of exposed, meaning you can stick a generator if the killer comes over to contest it, make playing against Skull Merchant in a 3-gen situation far manageable. You can even have one person getting intentionally spotted by the drone and then pursued away from it, so the others can sit on a generator without being spotted and tracked down. Not to mention the 12-second inactivity duration means that if you want your drones to have more scouting uptime, you would be better off sending them over long distances, since that would be the best way to get bang for your buck out of your drone orders, while you might only get a few seconds of tracking out of sending them over a short distance. The other point of contention here is the drones utility as chase tools. I decided it'd be best to give the drones themselves some small amount of lethality if you were caught out by one, doubling down on the idea that the drones can be a long-range threat now, at the cost of making them harder to effectively use and chase, especially alongside the killer. I got inspiration from this from Hanato's injury in Skull Merchant's lore, where he's sliced up by the drone blades after it gets tangled up in his sister's kite string. The idea here is to have the survivors getting caught out by a drone, potentially taking damage from it, but having some real counterplay to actually getting hit. Similar to Pinhead's chain, you can dodge it, flare the shot, take a corner to avoid getting hit if you time it right, except Pinhead can place the portal directly on you to ensure the hit, something which Crash and Burn can't let you do, because of the 6 meters of distance the drone keeps from the survivor at all times. This could have solid chase utility alongside the Skull Merchant's physical presence, but it added the 3-second lockout time between the start of a pursuit and the Crash and Burn, stopping it from being too much like Knight or Artist, where you die if you run into the killer or die if you hit the thing that's remotely zoning you. The power came about from adding elements of Knight and Artist to Skull Merchant's established design and power fantasy, but I wanted to avoid the feel bads and inevitable zoning related death that comes with those killers, by giving the survivor some wiggle room to go somewhere they can flare out or turn a tight corner to evade a Crash and Burn immediately, should the killer choose to control the drone. The claw trap's a very nice touch that I wanted to keep to ensure that a little bit of old Skull Merchant was still left behind, since her radar is probably her most popular mechanic and keeping it useful is nice. But the pallet break and haste is a little bit cheesy, so I decided to whittle it down to a pursuit enabler instead to encourage survivors to get rid of the traps even at long range. I've come up with an add-on path too designed to work with this new, more dynamic take on the power, and the list is here. Tell me what you think. If you know Skull Merchant decently well, you'll have noticed that a lot of these add-ons have gone unchanged, or slightly changed to accommodate the new possibilities the power unlocks. And to me, that is a good sign, because it shows I haven't freddied Skull Merchant despite the extensive changes. At the end of the day, that's my biggest worry is going into this little project, that the Skull Merchant that went out was just fundamentally other than the one that went in. I've always loved the idea of the Skull Merchant, a drone killer who masterminds trials better than the actual mastermind by corralling survivors around patrol zones and using information to her advantages like everything I've ever wanted. But the limitations on Skull Merchant's power, placed by her static 3J nature, prevent the power fantasy from really coming true. And given that Behaviour has said they want to make heavy changes to her, I'd be remiss not to at least throw my hat into the ring when it comes to suggesting some changes. Behaviour has listened to the community more and more lately when it comes to fixing problems with new killers, but Skull Merchant is a real tricky one. Hopefully whatever they have in mind for her will promote more active, skill-expressive gameplay while keeping the micromanagement, macro play and location manipulation that characterises her best attributes today. And who knows, maybe she'll even look like this, and if she does, you know who to bill. Well, so this is my idea for the Skull Merchant rework. It's probably coming fairly soon. What do you reckon? Do you think I've preserved enough of what makes her Skull Merchant? Do you think I haven't gone far enough? What do you reckon? Love to hear what you think. Tell me in the comments. Comments are cool, and while you're there, do subscribe if you're new and like the video if, well, you like the video. While down in the description there is that wonderful link to the Rework links in the Needed Chapter Spotlight, for which I did the narration, so do go check that out. Rework is an amazing creator and I'm honoured to be part of his work. If you really like me, you can swing by the Patreon, where the wonderful patrons help keep the content flowing and get access to early videos plus a bunch of other perks, so do go take a look if you're interested in supporting the channel directly. And on that note, guess I'll see you next time. Ta-ta for now.